Nation.
What are you doing here? You don't belong here. Yeah, you heard him. Get out of here now.
He stood outside the community center, calm, collected, and quiet. Then 2 officers pulled up, eyes cold, voices sharp. They didn't ask questions. They made assumptions. But what they didn't realize was who they were talking to. And what happened next, no one in the neighborhood saw it coming. Let's just say by the time the dust settled, those badges didn't feel so powerful anymore. Before we get deeper into this, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. It's always powerful to see how far these stories travel. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long, angular shadows across the cracked pavement outside the community center. The building, a faded brick structure with peeling paint and barred windows, stood as a quiet testament to the neighborhood's struggles and resilience. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the distant hum of traffic and children's laughter from a nearby playground. Standing just beyond the entrance steps was a man in his late 40s, his posture erect and unyielding. His skin was dark and weathered, marked by years of sun and service, and his eyes held the steady calm of someone who had faced far greater storms than the one brewing now. He wore a well-worn leather jacket over a simple shirt, the collar turned up slightly against the breeze, and on his chest a small pin gleamed, a symbol of his Marine Corps affiliation. His hands rested loosely at his sides, one clutching a faded canvas bag that had seen countless miles. His presence was quiet but commanding, a man used to being both seen and unseen depending on the room. 2 police officers approached with a brisk, calculated step, their uniforms crisp and their badges catching the fading light. One was a younger man with sharp blue eyes and a clipped blonde haircut, the other older, heavier, his face set in a permanent scowl that deepened as they neared. Their eyes locked on the veteran with a mix of suspicion and barely concealed disdain, their bodies radiating an unspoken assumption that this man did not belong here. "Hey, you there," the younger officer called out, voice edged with command, breaking the afternoon's quiet. The veteran turned slowly, his expression unchanging, eyes meeting the officer's without a flicker of fear or irritation. "Yes, officer?" His voice was low, measured, careful not to escalate what he already sensed as a volatile moment. "This is a restricted area. Identification?" The older officer stepped forward, his tone blunt, accusatory, as if the man's presence alone was a provocation. Without hesitation, the veteran reached inside his jacket and produced a wallet, opening it with deliberate calm to reveal a military ID card. The laminated card bore his name, rank, and photograph, a testament to years of service in the Marine Corps, marked with commendations and honorable discharge status. "I'm here for the community meeting," he said simply, voice steady. "I volunteer with the youth program." The officers exchanged a glance, their suspicion undiminished despite the clear proof of identity. The younger officer's jaw tightened as he scrutinized the ID, as if trying to find a reason to dismiss it. "This doesn't look right. You sure you belong here?" The veteran's gaze remained firm. "I belong wherever I choose to be. I'm here for the meeting, just like everyone else." A long moment passed, the tension hanging thick between them like the heavy summer air. A few neighborhood residents paused in their errands, their eyes flickering toward the unfolding scene but quickly turning away, unwilling to intervene or draw attention to themselves. The veteran did not flinch beneath the officer's scrutiny. Instead, he shifted the weight of his bag slightly, the worn canvas creaking faintly. His calm contrasted sharply with the officer's rigid postures, the younger one's hand hovering near his holstered weapon, the older one's fingers twitching restlessly. "Look, sir," the older officer began, his voice lowering but no less hostile. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. You fit the profile." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken assumptions about race and presence. The veteran's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in quiet resolve. "The only suspicious thing here is your assumption that I'm a threat because of the color of my skin and where I'm standing." The younger officer scoffed, stepping closer as if to intimidate. "Watch your tone." "I'm not here to argue," the veteran replied evenly. I'm here to serve this community just as I have served my country." For a moment, the officers seemed taken aback by the man's unwavering composure. The veteran's dignity stood like a shield against their suspicion, an unyielding reminder of his history and honor. But the officers' faces hardened, their gaze sharpening with renewed mistrust. "Step aside and show some respect," the older officer demanded, voice rising. "Or we'll have to take further action." The veteran did not move. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate breath, grounding himself as he met their gaze. "Respect is earned, not demanded, and I will not be moved without cause." The sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the scene, the long shadows stretching like silent witnesses to the growing conflict. A few bystanders lingered at a distance, their eyes wide but their bodies frozen in hesitation. The air crackled with the unspoken tension of a moment that had the weight of history behind it. The veteran's calm defiance was a stark contrast to the officer's bristling hostility. His presence was a quiet assertion of belonging in a place where he was not always welcomed, a reminder that service and sacrifice should transcend suspicion and prejudice. As the officers exchanged a brief, loaded glance, the younger one's hand twitched again toward his belt. The veteran's eyes remained steady, unflinching. The scene held, suspended between the fading light and the mounting tension, a silent battle of wills playing out on the cracked pavement outside the community center. The veteran's steady gaze met the younger officer's cold blue eyes without wavering, but beneath the surface, the tension tightened like a coiled spring. The older officer shifted his weight, his scowl deepening as he stepped forward, voice dropping lower but thick with derision. "Marine, huh? Saved the world and now just hanging out on our turf." His tone was sarcastic, dismissive, as though the man's military credentials were a joke rather than a badge of honor. "You think that gives you the right to walk around here like you own the place?" The veteran's face remained impassive, but a flicker of something deeper disappointment perhaps crossed his eyes. "I don't claim ownership of anything except my service and my right to be here. This community is mine as much as anyone else's." The younger officer snorted, stepping closer, his voice rising with a biting edge. "You expect us to believe you're just here to help kids? You're just another troublemaker, trying to play hero." A muscle twitched in the veteran's jaw. But he held his ground, his voice calm, yet firm. "I'm not playing anything. My record speaks for itself." He pulled the military ID from his jacket again and held it out, the laminated card catching the sunlight as if to underscore the truth it bore. 4 tours overseas, multiple commendations. I don't need to prove anything to you." The older officer laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Commendations don't mean squat when you're out here causing a ruckus. You think your uniform makes you untouchable? We don't care about medals. We care about what's happening on our streets." The veteran's eyes narrowed slightly, a quiet storm gathering behind them. "I'm not causing trouble. I'm trying to make things better." His voice was steady, but beneath it lay years of fatigue from fighting battles both abroad and at home, from the endless struggle to be seen as more than a stereotype. The younger officer's expression twisted into a sneer. "Better? You're just another loudmouth veteran looking for attention. Maybe you should go back to where you came from and leave the policing to us." The words hung heavy in the air, loaded with contempt and racial undertones. The veteran's calm faltered for a fraction of a second before he straightened, shoulders squared as if bearing the weight of unspoken history. "I've fought for this country. I've bled for it, and I will continue to stand for it, even when people like you refuse to see me as a man, not a threat." A nearby woman with a stroller paused, her eyes flicking between the veteran and the officers. An elderly man on a bench shifted uneasily, hands gripping his cane tighter. The neighborhood held its breath, caught in the uncomfortable space between confrontation and restraint. The older officer's voice dropped, laced with menace. "You're not here to help anyone. You're here to stir up trouble, and we're not going to let you get away with it." His hand moved toward his belt, fingers twitching near the radio. The veteran's response was quiet but resolute. "I'm here to build, not break. If you want to see a problem, look in the mirror." The younger officer's face darkened. "Watch your mouth. You don't get to lecture us." A sudden shift in the veteran's stance signaled a readiness to diffuse rather than escalate. "I'm not looking for a fight. I'm here to serve the community, just as I served my country. But if you treat me like this, how do you expect me to help?" The officers exchanged a brief, tense look before the younger one stepped back slightly, though his eyes remained sharp and suspicious. "We're just doing our job," he said, voice tight. "You don't get to decide how we do it." The veteran nodded slowly, as if accepting a painful truth. "That's where we disagree. Duty isn't just about enforcement, it's about respect, something I'm not seeing here." The older officer's scowl deepened, but he said nothing, his silence a grudging acknowledgement of the veteran's words. The younger officer, however, took a step closer again, voice low and threatening. "You'd better watch yourself. We don't take kindly to veterans who think they're above the law." The veteran met the threat without flinching. "I'm not above the law. I'm just asking to be treated like a human being. Isn't that what you're sworn to do?" The officers' faces tightened, their hostility simmering beneath forced control. The veteran's quiet conviction stood as a challenge to their assumptions, a mirror reflecting a truth they were reluctant to face. Behind them, the community center's door opened, and a few more residents stepped out, drawn by the escalating tension. A young man with a camera phone aimed discreetly at the scene, capturing the unfolding confrontation with a steady hand. The veteran shifted slightly, his voice softer now but no less firm. "I'm not your enemy. I'm your neighbor. I just want to work together." The younger officer's jaw clenched, and for a moment the threat in his eyes was unmistakable. But the veteran's unwavering gaze held fast, refusing to be broken. "Respect," he repeated quietly, "is earned through actions, not assumptions." The officers remained silent, their hostility simmering beneath the surface, as the sun continued its slow descent. The community watched, caught in the uneasy balance between authority and dignity, suspicion and service. As the veteran stood unmoved, the lines between them became stark. One side defined by rigid suspicion, the other by steadfast honor. The clash was not just a personal confrontation, but a reflection of deeper divides between those who serve and those who enforce, between respect earned and respect denied. The veteran's calm defiance was a quiet declaration, a refusal to be diminished by prejudice. His presence challenged the officers' assumptions, forcing them to confront their biases even as they struggled to maintain control. The tension lingered, thick and unresolved, the afternoon light fading, but the conflict far from over. Each word, each look, each measured breath held the weight of history and the promise of change yet to come. The afternoon light had dimmed further, shadows stretching long and fragmented across the cracked pavement as the veteran remained rooted in place. His calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the rising tension between him and the two officers. The older officer's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the veteran's hand zone, still clutching the faded canvas bag, the other resting near his side, relaxed but ready. "All right, that's enough," the younger officer said abruptly, his voice sharper now, edged with the impatience of someone determined to assert control. "You're refusing to cooperate, and that's suspicious in itself. We're going to have to take you in." The veteran's eyes lifted slowly to meet the officers', a quiet incredulity in their depths. "Take me in? For what? I've done nothing wrong." The older officer moved closer, his tone low but firm. "You're in a restricted area after reports of suspicious activity. That's grounds for detainment." "I'm here for the community meeting," the veteran replied evenly. "And I've shown you my identification. There's no suspicion here except in your assumptions." The younger officer's hand moved toward the radio, clipped to his belt, fingers brushing the device as if to summon backup. "Step aside. We're placing you under arrest." The veteran's posture shifted, not in resistance, but in readiness, his voice steady as he spoke. "I'm not resisting. I'm only asking for the reason." "Suspicious behavior," the older officer repeated, eyes narrowing. "That's all you need." A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the escalating confrontation. Among them, a young bystander raised a phone, the red recording light blinking steadily as the camera captured every word, every gesture. The veteran's calmness in the face of hostility was unmistakable, a silent testament to dignity under pressure. The younger officer moved to place handcuffs on the veteran's wrists, his actions quick but not violent. The veteran did not flinch, allowing the officers to proceed without protest. His eyes scanned the crowd briefly, acknowledging the unseen witnesses with a quiet nod. As the cuffs clicked shut, the veteran's voice remained composed. "I understand you're doing your job, but this is unjust. I'm here to serve this community, not threaten it." The older officer grunted in response, his grip firm on the veteran's arm as he guided him toward the patrol car parked a few feet away. The younger officer followed, radio now pressed to his shoulder, calling in the detainment. The crowd murmured softly, a mixture of concern and helplessness rippling through the onlookers. The woman with the stroller edged away, clutching her child tighter. The elderly man on the bench shook his head slowly, his gaze fixed on the scene with a sadness born of too many similar moments. Inside the patrol car, the veteran sat quietly, wrists still cuffed, eyes steady despite the flashing patrol lights painting his face in alternating hues of red and blue. The younger officer tapped the steering wheel impatiently, while the older one reviewed the veteran's ID once more, his expression unreadable. Back outside, the young bystander's recording had already begun to circulate, the video spreading quickly across social media platforms, igniting a wave of outrage and calls for accountability. The veteran's dignified silence, in the face of unwarranted suspicion, resonated deeply, sparking conversations far beyond the neighborhood's borders. Community leaders, activists, and military representatives soon rallied to the veteran's defense, highlighting his decorated service record and condemning the officer's actions. The narrative taking shape in public discourse framed the incident not as an isolated event, but as a symptom of systemic issues within law enforcement's treatment of minorities and veterans alike. Meanwhile, inside the police station, the veteran was processed with mechanical efficiency. The officers involved filed reports laced with vague accusations of suspicious behavior and non-compliance, their language carefully chosen to obscure the lack of concrete evidence. The younger officer's frustration was evident, his notes betraying a defensive edge as he justified the arrest. The veteran remained composed throughout, answering questions with measured clarity, refusing to be drawn into confrontations or displays of anger. His silence was not submission, but a deliberate assertion of dignity and truth in the face of injustice. Outside the station, the community's response continued to swell. Meetings were organized, petitions circulated, and social media campaigns launched, all demanding a thorough investigation into the officer's conduct. The veteran's story became a rallying point, a catalyst for broader conversations about racial profiling, respect for military service, and the urgent need for reform. Back in the interrogation room, the veteran's calm presence filled the space, a stark contrast to the tension simmering just beyond the door. Despite the circumstances, he did not waver, his resolve unbroken even as the hours stretched on. The officers who had detained him found themselves grappling with the consequences of their actions, their initial confidence shaken by public scrutiny and internal reviews. The veteran's quiet strength served as a mirror to their biases, forcing a reckoning that was uncomfortable but necessary. As the night deepened, the veteran was finally released, the charges dismissed for lack of evidence. He stepped back onto the streets of his community, his dignity intact, his resolve hardened by the experience. The video of his arrest continued to circulate, fueling debates and inspiring calls for change. The veteran's story was no longer just his own, it had become a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of quiet courage in the face of systemic injustice. The video, raw and unfiltered, pulsed across screens with relentless urgency and unyielding spotlight on the moment when a decorated Marine veteran was handcuffed outside a quiet community center. The footage captured every second, the officer's cold suspicion, the veteran's steady composure, the silent crowd bearing witness. It spread like wildfire, shared and reshared, igniting a storm of outrage that rippled far beyond the neighborhood's cracked sidewalks. Social media feeds brimmed with angry comments and heartfelt support, Hashtags demanding justice trended overnight as strangers and friends alike rallied behind the veterans' cause. Respect our veterans, end racial profiling, and justice for the hero became digital battle cries, echoing in forums, news outlets, and city council chambers. Community leaders stepped forward, their voices rising in unison. Reverend Thompson, a respected figure in the neighborhood, addressed a gathering at the local church, his tone both somber and resolute. "We cannot stand by while those who have served our nation are treated as threats in their own communities. This is not just an attack on one man, it's an attack on the very values we hold dear." Military representatives also joined the chorus, their statements underscoring the gravity of the incident. Colonel Jameson, a retired officer and advocate for veterans' rights, condemned the officer's actions in a televised interview. "This Marine served with honor and distinction. To see him treated with such disrespect is a disgrace to our uniform and a failure of those entrusted to protect and serve." The narrative unfolding in the public eye framed the veteran not as a suspect, but as a symbol of courage and resilience. His service record, once a mere detail in an arrest report, became the centerpiece of a broader conversation about the treatment of veterans, particularly those of color, by law enforcement agencies. News outlets dissected the footage and the incident's details, exposing patterns of racial bias and systemic flaws within the police department. Interviews with experts on criminal justice reform highlighted the urgent need for changes in training and community relations. Meanwhile, the veteran himself found his phone inundated with messages, words of encouragement from strangers, invitations to speak at community forums, and offers of support from advocacy groups. Yet, through it all, he remained grounded, his responses measured and focused on healing rather than division. In the heart of the neighborhood, a candlelight vigil was organized, drawing a diverse crowd united by a shared desire for justice and change. The veteran stood among them, not as a victim, but as a leader. His presence, a quiet beacon of hope amid the flickering flames. Conversations ignited in schools, churches, and local businesses, prompting introspection and dialogue. Parents spoke with their children about the realities of prejudice and the importance of standing up for one another. Young veterans shared their own stories of struggle and triumph, weaving a tapestry of resilience that strengthened the community's fabric. At City Hall, council members debated resolutions aimed at addressing racial profiling and improving police accountability. Proposals for mandatory bias training and civilian oversight boards gained momentum, propelled by the veteran's story and the public outcry it inspired. Within the police department, the incident prompted internal reviews and uneasy discussions. Officers confronted uncomfortable truths about their own biases and the culture that had allowed such a confrontation to escalate. Training programs were quickly drafted, emphasizing respect for all citizens and recognition of veterans' unique experiences. The veteran was invited to participate in these programs, his voice lending authenticity and urgency to the lessons being taught. His willingness to engage bridged gaps, fostering empathy where suspicion once reigned. Throughout the unfolding drama, the veteran maintained his dignity, refusing to let anger consume him. His story was not just about one encounter, but about the broader fight against injustice, fight fought not only on the streets, but in hearts and minds. As the days turned into weeks, the community's outrage transformed into action. Grassroots organizations formed, dedicated to monitoring law enforcement practices and supporting those affected by racial bias. Workshops and town halls became regular fixtures, nurturing ongoing dialogue and collaboration. The veteran's experience became a catalyst, illuminating the path toward a more just and inclusive future. His quiet strength inspired others to speak out, to listen, and to work together for change. In the midst of this awakening, the veteran continued his volunteer work, leading youth programs and mentoring young men and women who looked to him as a role model. His presence was a living testament to resilience and the transformative power of dignity in the face of adversity. The community, once fractured by fear and mistrust, began to heal, united by a shared commitment to confront prejudice and honor those who serve. The veteran's story was no longer just a moment captured on video, it was a movement, a call to conscience that echoed far beyond the city limits. The police department's interior was sterile and humming with activity, a stark contrast to the charged emotions swirling outside its walls. In the conference room, the chief sat behind a polished oak table, fingers steepled, eyes scanning the thick folder before him. The room buzzed with quiet urgency as officers, administrators, and community liaisons gathered for a meeting that had become unavoidable. "Public pressure is mounting," the chief began, voice measured but tinged with fatigue. "This incident has exposed serious concerns about our department's approach and our officers' conduct. We need to act, and we need to act swiftly." Across the table, the deputy nodded, flipping through the report filled with vague descriptions of suspicious behavior and non-compliance. The language, once sufficient, now seemed hollow, failing to capture the gravity of the situation or the veteran's dignified demeanor. "We're launching a formal investigation into the officers involved," the chief continued. "This isn't just about one encounter, it's about restoring trust. We owe that to the community and to ourselves." The meeting shifted focus toward preventative measures. Training programs addressing racial bias, cultural competency, and respect for military service members were drafted with urgency. The veteran's story had peeled back the layers of systemic issues, revealing how implicit biases had shaped reflexive responses and eroded community relations. Sergeant Ramirez, a veteran officer with years of experience, spoke up. "We've relied too heavily on assumptions and stereotypes. It's time to resetto, educate, to listen, and to understand." Plans were made to bring in experts on implicit bias, community leaders, and even veterans like the man who had been wrongfully detained. The goal was clear: to transform the department's culture from within, to replace suspicion with respect, and to ensure that every member understood the weight of their authority. Outside the department, the veteran was invited to share his perspective. At a gathering hosted by the city's Civilian Oversight Board, he spoke with quiet conviction. "I've served this country, and I've served my community. The uniform I wore should not have made me a target, it should have earned me respect." His words resonated deeply, bridging divides and challenging long-held prejudices. The veteran's willingness to engage, to be part of the solution, softened hardened stances and opened doors for dialogue. Meanwhile, policy reviews were underway. The vague language that had justified questionable arrests was scrutinized and revised. Clear guidelines were established to prevent the misuse of suspicious behavior as a catch-all reason for detainment, emphasizing evidence-based assessments over gut feelings or biases. Community engagement initiatives blossomed in the wake of the incident. Officers began attending neighborhood meetings not as enforcers, but as partners, listening to residents' concerns and sharing their own experiences. The veteran volunteered to lead workshops, sharing his story to humanize the abstract concepts of service and sacrifice. Within the department, the ripple effects were tangible. Officers reflected on their own implicit biases, attending training sessions with a mix of skepticism and newfound understanding. Conversations that had once been avoided were now encouraged, fostering a culture of accountability and growth. The veteran's presence became a catalyst for change, his experience a living lesson on the cost of prejudice and the power of dignity. His quiet strength challenged the department to rise above entrenched attitudes and embrace reform. Discussions extended beyond training and policies. Recruitment efforts shifted to prioritize diversity and community representation, aiming to build a force that mirrored the neighborhoods it served. The department recognized that building trust required more than words. It demanded action and accountability. As weeks turned into months, the veteran's case became a benchmark for progress. The officers involved faced disciplinary measures, signaling a commitment to uphold standards and confront misconduct. At the same time, the veteran continued his work in the community, embodying the change he sought. His story was shared in classrooms and training centers alike, a reminder that behind every uniform and every badge was a human being deserving of respect. The police department's transformation was far from complete, but the veteran's experience had ignited a shifter movement toward empathy, justice, and partnership. The once rigid barriers between law enforcement and community began to crack, revealing the possibility of understanding and shared purpose. In this unfolding chapter, the veteran's dignity was not only preserved, but elevated, inspiring a department and a community to confront their biases and work toward a future where service was honored and justice was truly blind. The community center, once a backdrop to confrontation, now buzzed with a different energy. The veteran stood at the front of a modest room filled with neighbors, officers, and young faces eager to listen. Chairs were arranged in a loose semicircle, the glow of a projector casting soft light onto the walls as names and images flickered across the screen stories of veterans, civilians, and those caught in the crossfire of misunderstanding. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of experience without bitterness. "I'm here not just as a veteran, but as a neighbor who wants to build bridges. We've all faced walls of fear, walls of judgment, but those walls can come down when we talk, when we listen." The room was quiet, the air thick with anticipation as he shared his journey from the battlefield overseas to the neighborhood streets where his service was questioned. He spoke of resilience, of dignity maintained in the face of injustice, and of the power found in community solidarity. Officers who had once stood across from him in suspicion now sat beside him in dialogue, their uniforms softened by the shared commitment to understanding. Sergeant Ramirez, present in the crowd, nodded appreciatively, his earlier skepticism giving way to genuine reflection. Between speeches, small groups formed. A young woman recounted her brother's struggles with police encounters, her voice wavering but honest. An older man spoke of his time in the military, drawing parallels between service and the fight for respect at home. The veteran listened, acknowledging each story with empathy, weaving them into the larger narrative of healing. Workshops followed, designed not just to educate but to humanize. Role-playing exercises broke down barriers of fear and misconception, while open forums invited questions and candid conversations. The veteran facilitated sessions on leadership, emphasizing accountability and the importance of presence over power. Stories surfaced tales of veterans who had faced similar prejudice, civilians who had been misunderstood, and officers who had learned to confront their own biases. These narratives built a shared experience, fostering empathy where suspicion had once prevailed. The veteran's role extended beyond speaking. He organized neighborhood patrols that included both residents and officers, shifting perceptions through shared responsibility. Together, they mapped safe routes for children, identified areas needing attention, and celebrated small victories that knit the community closer. Schools invited him to speak, where he engaged with youth on topics of respect, service, and courage. His message was clear: dignity is not given, it is claimed through actions and perseverance. Students, some skeptical at first, gradually embraced his words, finding in his story a mirror for their own struggles and hopes. Community leaders lauded these efforts as the beginnings of real change. Reverend Thompson remarked during a local radio broadcast, "Healing comes not from silence, but from the courage to speak and the willingness to listen." This veteran has sparked a dialogue that transcends conflict and builds connection. The police department, too, saw the benefits of this growing solidarity. Officers reported a shift in their daily interactions, noting increased trust and cooperation. Training sessions evolved into ongoing conversations, with the veteran's presence lending authenticity and urgency. Yet, the journey was not without setbacks. Old wounds surfaced in heated debates, and moments of distrust flickered in the eyes of both residents and officers. But each challenge was met with renewed commitment, the community learning to navigate discomfort as part of growth. The veteran's leadership was pivotal in these moments, his calm demeanor and unwavering belief in the possibility of change anchoring the collective effort. He reminded those gathered that progress was neither linear nor easy, but essential. As the workshops and meetings continued, new initiatives emerged. Youth mentorship programs pairing veterans with at-risk teens, cultural exchange events celebrating the neighborhood's diversity, and forums addressing mental health and trauma. These efforts created spaces where stories could be shared without judgment, where healing was a communal act. The veteran's own experience became a touchstone reminder that resilience was born in the intersection of personal struggle and collective support. The community's evolving solidarity was reflected in everyday moments. Neighbors exchanging greetings with genuine warmth, officers offering assistance beyond enforcement, and youth stepping into roles of leadership inspired by the veteran's example. In the quiet aftermath of these gatherings, the veteran often found himself reflecting on the journey. The scars of confrontation remained, but so did a profound sense of purpose. Through dialogue and shared experience, the community was forging a new pathone where respect was earned through understanding and presence. This chapter of healing was ongoing, marked by small victories and persistent challenges. Yet, the veteran's presence transformed the narrative, turning a story of suspicion into one of solidarity and inspiring a neighborhood to envision a future defined not by division but by connection. The disciplinary hearing was held in a stark, fluorescent-lit room within the police department, its walls lined with plaques and framed commendations that now seemed to underscore the gravity of the moment. The two officers faced the panel, their faces tight and guarded, the weight of public scrutiny pressing heavily upon them. Across the room, the veteran sat quietly, his presence a silent testament to resilience and justice. The chief began the proceedings with a measured tone. "We are here to address the conduct of Officers Daniels and Reed during the incident on April 14th involving Mr. Booker, a decorated Marine Corps veteran. The department acknowledges the severity of the situation and the impact it has had on community trust." Officer Daniels shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact, while Officer Reed's jaw clenched, his hands folded tightly in his lap. The panel reviewed the footage, witness statements and reports, each piece painting a picture of bias and overreach that could no longer be dismissed. The officer's actions violated department policies regarding respectful engagement and the appropriate grounds for detainment, the chief stated. As a result, disciplinary measures will be enforced, including suspension and mandatory retraining. The veteran observed quietly, his face composed but reflective of the long road that had led to this reckoning. His dignified silence spoke volumes, a stark contrast to the officer's discomfort and the department's attempt at accountability. Outside the hearing room, the community gathered to hear the outcome. News cameras captured the veteran stepping forward to address the crowd, his voice calm but resolute. This moment is not just about punishment. It's about recognition that no one should be judged by their appearance or background, but by their character and actions. The veteran's reputation, once challenged by suspicion and arrest, was now publicly restored and celebrated. His military service and steadfast dignity had become a symbol of resilience in the face of systemic injustice, inspiring others to confront their own biases and stand against discrimination. The officer's disciplinary actions sent a clear message within the department and beyond. Accountability was essential, and prejudice could no longer be tolerated. Training programs expanded, community partnerships deepened, and policies were re-examined to prevent future injustices. The veteran's story became a touchstone in the city's ongoing dialogue about race, authority, and justice. His experience was incorporated into police training curricula, ensuring that new recruits learned the importance of respect and the dangers of implicit bias. Community leaders and activists cited his journey as evidence that change was possible when courage met accountability. The neighborhood, once fractured by fear and mistrust, began to heal, its members united by a shared commitment to equity and dignity. In public forums and classrooms, the veteran's narrative was recounted not as a tale of victimhood, but as a testament to the power of presence and perseverance. Young people, especially those from marginalized communities, found in him a role model who embodied strength without aggression. The veteran continued his work, mentoring youth and advocating for justice, his life a bridge between worlds, often divided by suspicion and misunderstanding. His quiet resilience inspired a movement that transcended the boundaries of the city, touching hearts and minds far beyond its borders. In the closing scenes, the community center's doors opened wide, welcoming neighbors of all backgrounds. The veteran stood among them, a living symbol of hope and transformation. The sun cast warm light over the gathering, illuminating faces uplifted in solidarity. His journey underscored a profound truth. Justice is not merely a legal construct, but a moral imperative that demands recognition of shared humanity. Through quiet dignity and steadfast courage, the veteran had sparked a reckoning gun that challenged prejudice, encouraged empathy, and forged a path toward genuine social change. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe. Thanks for watching all the way through. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe, share, and like. I'll meet you down in the comments. We've got a lot to talk about.